Um, so Brazilian retail experienced this massive growth spurt back in 2024.
Right, it was huge.
Yeah. But today, with household debt recently hitting an all-time historical record of over 80%, you really have to wonder, is the economic engine about to stall?
It's a very real possibility.
Well, welcome to Macroeconomy AI. For the record, today's date is Thursday, 2026-07-02. And I want to explicitly mention that the data collection and research for today's analysis were also conducted exactly on this date, 2026-07-02.
Fresh off the press.
Exactly. So our deep dive today is titled Consumer and Retail. And our mission here is to really just cut through all the noise. We want to understand the vital signs of the economy by looking at the very end of the supply chain, which is you, the everyday consumer.
Because that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Definitely. But hey, before we jump in, a huge thank you to you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Make sure to engage with the content, drop a comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.
It really helps us out.
It does. And I also want to mention our episode sponsor, DataStream Analytics. But first, let me explicitly describe our channel exactly as this channel, Macroeconomy AI, bringing a compilation of analyses and news on macroeconomics, technology, and artificial intelligence.
Spot on.
Thanks. So anyway, our sponsor, DataStream Analytics, they provide, cutting-edge predictive modeling for businesses trying to navigate these exact kinds of turbulent waters we're talking about today. So definitely go check out their link in the description.
Awesome. And just before we get into the heavy data, I need to give a quick rule reminder. This deep dive is strictly an objective analysis of public data and economic scenarios.
Just looking at the facts.
Exactly. This contains absolutely no investment advice, so just keep that in mind as we go.
Right. Okay, so to understand where the economy is going, we first have to look at the sheer scale of the retail sector and, its recent trajectory.
Yeah, it's basically the thermometer of family consumption.
That's a perfect way to put it. Because you look at the commerce sector as a whole, it employs 10.5 million people as of 2023.
Which is a massive chunk of the workforce.
Oh, totally. And out of those 10.5 million, retail makes up a massive 72.7%. That is 7.7 million jobs just in retail.
Right. So when that shifts, everyone feels it.
Yeah, and we saw a huge shift recently. 2024 was just a boom year, what they call restricted retail. So like everyday goods grew at 4.7%.
And that was the highest since 2012, right?
Yep, highest in over a decade. But then 2025 showed this really sharp deceleration. It closed at only 1.6% growth.
A pretty steep drop-off.
And it gets worse. By April 2026, the volume of sales actually fell 1.5% compared to March.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like a runner finishing a marathon at a sprint in 2024, but by 2025, they're hitting the wall and jogging. And now in 2026, they are literally starting to walk.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. But I have to ask you, is this slowdown just, a natural stabilization after a post-pandemic boom, or is this a red flag for a broader economic retraction?
Oh, it's definitely a red flag. I mean, the strategic insight here is that this deceleration isn't just some random blip. It perfectly maps onto these broader macroeconomic pressures.
How so?
Well, think about how retail works. It's inherently a high-volume, low-margin game, right? The key risk scenario we're looking at, and this is a big takeaway for social media highlights, is that if volume continues to contract month over month like it did in April 2026, the market faces a scenario of total stagnation.
Because they can't rely on just pushing tons of product anymore.
Exactly. Businesses can no longer rely on sheer volume growth to maintain their margins. They have fixed costs, rent, payroll, lights, and if fewer items are going out the door, those margins just collapse.
Wow. Okay, so if retail's slowing down that much, we really have to ask why. And the answer, it basically lies in the listener's wallet, the average citizen's wallet.
Yeah, we have to transition from macro growth down to the micro household struggle.
Right. Because the data from the CNC, the National Confederation of Trade, it shows a pretty grim reality.
Oh.
Household debt just consecutively broke historical records.
It's alarming, honestly.
It really is. It hit 80.2% in February 2026, and then it ticked up to 80.4% in March 2026.
Which is the highest since they started tracking this series in 2010.
Exactly. And on top of that, almost 30% of families have debts in arrears. Like they are actively overdue.
Yeah, they're missing payments.
And nearly 30% of their income is entirely committed to debt. And hanging over all of this is the Selic interest rate, which is sitting at a punishing 15%, as noted in January 2026.
Oh, 15% is brutal.
So I'd push back here. If over 80% of families are in debt and paying 15% interest, how on earth did retail grow 1.6% in 2025 at all? I mean, are people literally just buying their groceries on credit cards?
Honestly, yes. But to fully synthesize the data, you have to look at the labor market.
Okay, what's happening there?
Well, we had a very overheated labor market in 2025. It created 1.27 million formal jobs.
Oh, wow. Okay, so lots of new paychecks.
Right, but those high interest rates create this intense tug of war. The income from all those new jobs, it's immediately being eaten by debt servicing.
So the money comes in and just goes right back out to the bank.
Exactly. The strategic risk here is that we're going to see discretionary spending, clothes, electronics, just totally collapse.
Because there's no money left for fun stuff.
Right. While essential spending, like food and the pharmacy, that survives, but it survives entirely on credit.
Man. So they're literally financing their survival.
Yeah, pretty much.
So with wallets squeezed by all this debt, how are consumers and retailers even adapting to survive? Because they have to be changing how and where they buy.
Oh, they definitely are. And a huge part of that is the autocorrejo phenomenon.
Right, the cash and carry model. So it's basically a hybrid wholesale and retail setup.
Yeah, think giant warehouses buying in bulk.
And the numbers on this are crazy. It generated 360 billion raise in 2025. That is roughly 3% of the entire national GDP.
It's a behemoth of a sector.
But even this giant slowed to a mere 1.7% volume growth at the end of 2025, which analysts say is partly due to food deflation.
Right, but it's not just where they shop, it's how they pay.
Oh, absolutely. We have to talk about Pix. The dominance here is staggering. Pix accounted for 54.7% of all retail payment transactions in the second half of 2025.
Over half of all transactions. That's insane.
Yeah, it's 42.9 billion operations. I mean, Pix didn't just replace cash, right? It became the digital oxygen of the Brazilian economy.
That's a really good way to describe it.
It's like the transition from physical maps to GPS. Once you switch, you can literally never go back to the friction of the old way.
No, you really can't. It's too efficient.
But, looking at this rise of autocorrejo, I have to ask, does this mean the traditional supermarket is slowly dying?
Well, the strategic insight here is that efficiency is now the absolute only way to protect margins.
Okay, break that down for me.
So Pix reduces transaction fees for merchants, right? And autocorrejo reduces overhead. They don't have baggers, they don't have fancy displays.
So they pass those savings on to the squeezed consumer.
Exactly. The scenario going forward is radical consolidation. We're already seeing it. The 5 largest autocorrejo networks already control 71% of the sector's revenue.
Wait, 71%? Just 5 networks?
Yep. The smaller guys just can't compete with that level of efficiency.
That is wild. And we also have to factor in e-commerce, right? Though the data there is kind of a mess.
Yeah, the data reality is definitely messy. The official IBGE stat shows online sales are 8.8% of retail revenue for 2023.
But other sources claim it's way higher, like over 12%.
Right. But regardless of the exact number, the number of businesses selling online practically doubled from 2019 to 2023.
So everyone is scrambling to get efficient, either by going wholesale, using Pix, or selling online.
Exactly. They have to.
But that brings us to the fallout. Because we've seen the macro slowdown, we see the consumer debt, the shifts in habits. And what is the ultimate consequence for the businesses themselves?
It hits the workforce. Hard.
Yeah, the job shedding is alarming. Because despite total formal jobs growing in Brazil, the commerce sector specifically lost 54,355 jobs in December 2025.
Which is a huge hit for 1 month.
And it didn't stop there. They lost another 60,503 jobs in May 2026.
Right, and that correlates directly with collapsing confidence.
Yeah, the Commerce Confidence Index has been just plummeting. By May 2026, it hit 84.2 points.
And just for context, that is its lowest level since March 2021.
The height of the pandemic lockdown.
Exactly. That's how bad the sentiment is right now.
And we're seeing specific sectors bleed out. Like apparel and footwear have lost nearly 25% of their workforce over the last decade, while places like pharmacies have actually grown.
Essential versus discretionary right there.
Yep. But I have to say, acting as the voice of the listener here, losing 60,000 jobs in a single month in May 2026, that sounds like retail executives are just hitting the panic button. Is this just a seasonal blip, or are they preparing for a full-on recession?
It's a sobering analysis, honestly. When you see a dropping ICOM combined with that level of job shedding, it means retailers are taking a highly defensive posture.
They're battening down the hatches.
Exactly. They are looking at that 15% interest rate, they're looking at that 80.4% consumer debt, and they are trimming the fat wherever they can.
Which means firing people.
Right. And the risk scenario here is a brutal negative feedback loop.
Oh, because if they fire people, those people can't buy things.
Exactly. Retail fires workers to save money. Those fired workers now have zero income, so they consume even less.
And then retail revenues fall further.
Which leads to more layoffs. It's a vicious cycle.
Man. So the Brazilian consumer has proven incredibly resilient, right? They've been keeping retail afloat through sheer force of will and, well, credit.
Well, credit.
Yeah. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. If global supply chain shocks cause inflation to spike again tomorrow, what happens to a population that is already 80.4% in debt?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is. It's a delicate house of cards. If essentials get more expensive and credit is maxed out, the whole thing could just tip over.
It's a very precarious position. And before we wrap up, I need to provide our standard disclaimer.
Go for it.
As a reminder, this content is exclusively informative and educational, compiling data, projections, and analyses from public market sources. This material expresses no ideological bias and does not constitute investment, financial, legal, or tax advice of any kind. Economic projections are subject to frequent revisions, and past performance does not guarantee future returns. Strategic or financial decisions require deep, personalized analysis. Always consult qualified professionals before making any decisions.
Perfect. Well, that was today's Macroeconomy AI. We'll leave it here. You all stay well and keep an eye out for our new broadcasts. Subscribe to our channel, access the links, and follow Macroeconomy AI on social media.
Bye!
Bye.